Hi everyone, welcome to our Hollins Happy Hour. We'll give everyone just a minute to get in. We're so delighted to see all of you all. This is fabulous. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll give everyone just another minute. Thanks to you all for being so prompt and joining us this evening. We have a great program and some enthusiastic students, so we're very excited that you're here. Well, welcome everyone. For those of you that I don't know, I see so many familiar faces on the screen. I'm Lauren Walker. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations. And I want to give a big shout out to my team, Jasmine Carter and Leah Abraham, who are here and have really worked together with all of our campus partners to make an exciting lineup of Hollins Happy Hours. This series has run throughout the semester and we've had a lot of fun pulling these together. Tonight, we're doing the International Program Happy Hour, and we're really thrilled to have Ramona Kirsch here with us and several of our students. So thanks for joining us. Sit back, relax, and Ramona, I'll let you introduce yourself. You've been at Hollins a little over a year and really just left, made big marks and experienced and anticipated a lot of needs. So I'll let you share all that with us.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you to your team, Leah and Jasmine, for getting us all in the right place at the right time. And happy hour, everyone. This is Ramona. I'm so pleased to be here. As Lauren mentioned, I came to Hollins September 9th, 2019, and it's been quite a year, as you can imagine. And Lauren asked me to share a little bit of my background. I'm a first-generation American. My mother was an immigrant, grew up in an immigrant home with a single mother. I have been traveling the world, both for visiting family in Europe as well as my profession. I've been in international education for over 20 years in institutions in the United States. I've been lucky enough to have a couple of, well, 3 Fulbrights. I was an English teaching assistant in Vienna, Austria. I was also then a research during my graduate work in Austria, and then I was able to do a international education administrator's Fulbright to India. I am passionate about international education. I believe absolutely what Mark Twain wrote long ago, that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And that has been my life's passion. And I'm lucky enough to be able to come to a place like Hollins, who I think gets that. And today, what we have for you all are some incredible students who have had incredible experiences. All of these students have experienced their study abroad programs, either before, during, the pandemic, and I've asked them to come and share their stories about resilience. And so I'm excited to let them have a lot of the floor, but first I wanted to share a little bit about cocktails. Now I know the invitation said for all of you to bring some cocktail recipes, so I'm excited to hear about those. I'll give a few, and went from Japan, where I used to work for about a 5-year period. I went there about 3 or 4 times a year. These wonderful cocktails. And also from Peru, when I hiked the Inca Trail for 4 days. Enjoyed this in Cusco after it was all over. So I'm going to stop there to see if any of the alumni would like to speak, would like to comment, would like to share any of your recipes. That's all right. We'll keep going. And Lauren, I'm going to give you these recipes afterwards. So if anybody asks for them, we can go. From Brazil, incredible, this sweet, wonderful, it's like drinking a cake. caipirinha. I know I mispronounced that, which is amazing. And Nepal, one of our students, Udipta, is from Nepal. This rakshi is that wonderful millet and rice, which you would call kind of liqueur, almost like a vodka. It's almost like the vodka of Nepal, which if you've never had it is quite astonishing. But let's look at one more. In Korea, love to go there. There's this wonderful non-alcoholic, it's almost like your cider in the winter. It's ginger, cinnamon, with these sugars and spices that are just astonishing. And then finally, because my heritage is German-Austrian, Bohemian, when I lived in Austria, the spritzer, 3 parts white wine, 1 part club soda, that was hard to beat. So just a little bit of sharing, and I'll stop there to see if we have any others that would like to share, comment. Well, if you have an international cocktail that you'd like to share, it'd be fun to kind of accumulate a list, right? So send them to Lauren and we'll get them all out to everyone. So without further ado, I'd really like to introduce our students. There's 5 students who have been all over the world, literally, Asia, Africa, the EU, in Europe, in England as well, that are going to share their stories of resilience. As you all know, March 13th, Friday, March 13th, everybody remembers that date, 2019, is the date that we told the entire, the university shut down, and then I went into hyper mode with all of my students abroad. Many of these students either had just come home or were abroad and spending their time in countries with very different experiences. And I thought it would be wonderful to hear their stories of resilience and how they came through that and were able to garner such incredible experiences and share that with you. So first, I would love to go to Anne Mochizuki. She's a wonderful international student. She actually is studying abroad with Hollins from Japan, but I will let her tell her story now. Anne?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Anne Mochizuki. I'm a senior psychology major, and I studied in Ludwigsburg, Germany in fall 2019, spring 2020. So for my whole junior year, I was being away from Hollins, friends, and my family. So I'm very happy to be back on campus this semester. And it is so nice to see everyone's face today. I'm excited to share my story. So as Ramona said, I'm an international student from Japan. So leaving for Germany was not something very new to me. I was mentally ready for it. I was used to be away from my family, friends, surrounded by new people, language, and culture. But every single day in Germany was very exciting, more exciting than I had thought. And as the quote said, the experience in Germany gave me an opportunity to find myself, especially after the outbreak of COVID-19. So as you know, Hollins has diverse students, including international students. We have international students from Japan, of course, me, Nepal, India, UK, Germany, so many places. So I never thought I was a minority on campus. If you look at the numbers, I am, but I have never felt it. Thanks to the inclusive environment and amazing people. But in Ludwigsburg, where I studied, it was a lot different. In Ludwigsburg, I really saw East Asian people. Of course, they had some exchange students, but they're mostly from European countries. So for example, France and Italy, UK. They also had students from Australia and the United States. But the only Asian students I saw was 3 Korean girls. So it was definitely a rare experience for me to be a minority person in the city and at the school. But it was obvious, but I didn't really think about it until the outbreak of COVID-19. So as you know, coronavirus has changed so many things around the world, and I also experienced that. So for example, when I was walking on the street, just random strangers said hello corona to me. Or when I was on the train, one guy was like, oh, coronavirus is on the train. And I understand that because, you know, coronavirus first spread from one of East Asian countries. So obviously people had a stereotype of Asian people and coronavirus. But when I was on campus, or I'm on campus, I don't really have that experience feeling that, oh, I'm Asian or I'm a minority. So it was a totally new experience, new feeling for me. It's not like good or bad, but it was just so new to me. Of course, the experience because of COVID hurt my feelings, but it also gave me a chance to reflect on myself or my identity and appreciate how blessed I was to be in an inclusive environment with supportive people at Hollins. And I also got to know the world outside of campus as a minority college student or someone being away from my home. So it was just so nice to place myself somewhere different or out of my comfort zone and see myself from a different perspective. So overall, spending my junior year in Germany was one of the best experiences and decisions I've ever made. I was so lucky enough to finish 2 semesters, even though a lot of people had to go back home. I was able to stay in Germany. And I am so glad that I have met so many new friends and new people in Germany, and I would definitely do it again. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ann. That was amazing. And I can tell you, Ann is also one of our global ambassadors who's inspiring other students to study abroad. Does anyone have any questions for Ann?
So I have a question. This is Barbara Duckworth. Ann, why did you go to Germany?
So I'm a psychology major, but I'm also interested in education. And the university I studied at is called Ludwigsburg University of Education. And at that university, a lot of students want to become a teacher. And they had so many linguistics or classes for future teachers. So that's why I decided to go to Germany.
Thank you.
This is Elizabeth. Ann, did you live with a family or were you in a dorm?
I lived in a dorm. It was called a student village. So I lived with other exchange students and local.
Any other questions? All right. Ann, thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. Vielen Dank. Or Jose Gosmasta. Thank you very much. Yeah. Dozo, dozo. Okay, now, who was in Kenya, and literally our School for Field Studies is this wonderful program that literally you're out in the middle of nowhere. Often you do not have your tech that we're all used to. So Cameron, please share your story with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cameron. I am a senior biology major and an environmental science minor here at Hollins. So as Ramona said, I studied at the School for Field Studies in Kenya. The School for Field Studies is a program that is an affiliate program with Hollins University. So it is not like London Abroad where it's directly Hollins students going to travel, but it's someone that Hollins partners with so that we are able to have field experiences, specifically us science and math students. Because it's a Hollins affiliate program, I studied with students from all over the United States, which was really unique considering Hollins is a pretty small knit community, and I'm very used to just me and my other colleagues. And now I was with guys and I was with people with all different backgrounds. So right off the bat, it was actually very off-putting. As you would imagine, going to Africa is a pretty big change. But that actually wasn't what the biggest learning curve was for us. It actually was getting to know the other students. I never imagined I would have so many differences with other Americans, but it really surprised me. It surprised all of us. In that, not in the ways I think you would expect either. As it started, we didn't feel that coronavirus would really affect us. I also want to apologize. It's telling me my internet is unstable, so you may lose me a little. But we didn't think we were going to be touched by the coronavirus. We were very confident. We literally would say every day, like, oh, we don't need to worry about that. That's not our problem. We're so secluded. We were in the middle of the Amboseli. So we kind of lived in our own world of ignorance. We didn't really need to keep up with what was going on. We would just kind of look at the numbers. If anyone got like a news update sent to their phone, we would check it out and say, okay, it's now in Italy or it's now in Europe. But then we would move on. And so a lot of the periods of change really came with getting to know each other. There was a lot of discourse when it came to backgrounds, different ways that people were used to living each day, their different rituals, when people wanted to eat breakfast or when they didn't, or what kind of course loads they were used to. So we were constantly learning more about each other. Different preferences on how to spend our free time, because the way the SFS is that we are stuck together on this campus instead of in London where you might have your roommate, but you could go out to whatever, restaurant or shopping center that you would want to. We had to stay together the whole time. So it took a long time to finally learn, like, how do we compromise? How do we talk to each other? How do we get used to this? And it was right when we started to get comfortable that some reality started to hit. And that was when the first case hit. I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack. It started to come over to America, and a lot of our families were being affected. And that's when it kind of hit more to home, is like, is my mom and dad safe? Are my friends safe? Our colleges are shutting down. What's going on? Like, what's been happening? We didn't know. So we had to start having nightly meetings where every day after dinner, we would go sit in the gazebo in our hammocks and we would talk about if our families had lost their jobs, or if our friends were studying at home, or whose colleges were still in session, or whose friends had been sent home from abroad. And it started to really hurt to see our family struggling and we were doing okay. And it almost felt selfish, like, okay, we get to stay here, but the other people don't. But that's how we started to get even closer. I think that's when we became the closest we were the entire time, is that we had to lift each other up. One of our fellow students, their mom lost their job and she didn't know if she was even going to have a home when she left Kenya. And it was this really scary time period where we really had no choice but to be nice to each other, no matter, how dirty we felt or how many bugs were biting us. So each night we would listen to a podcast either about resiliency, or we would look at the news together and just kind of talk about, things might be rough, but it'll be all right, and the different ways we'll get through it. And then that's when those colleges started reaching out to students that were in Kenya. And the first that happened was the University of Wisconsin. It was just 2 students, and they said, you need to come home now. We don't care what you have to say about it. It was just a mass email sent out. There was no name included. They had no point of contact to answer to. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. You had to buy your own ticket and figure it out. And that was heartbreaking, because we were losing 2 of these people we had now come to love so much. and it felt selfish almost because like we got to stay and they had to go. And then 2 nights later, 2 more people, University of Colorado Boulder, said, you need to come home. No ifs, ands, or buts. We don't want to hear it. So we're losing 2 more. And it was just this like, we couldn't even sleep anymore. We actually always had our emails up and we kept refreshing it whenever we were able, and to see who was going to be next. It literally felt like this game of like elimination of how many people were going to get kicked out before it was all of us. And then of course with the spotty internet, it was just this, we couldn't get plane tickets. We didn't know how to call airlines to book tickets because airlines were shutting down. And it got super chaotic really quickly. And then of course Hollins University reached out to me and Ramona said, how you doing? Do you feel safe? Stay there. And then I thought, how do I tell anyone that I'm allowed to stay? And so actually I kind of kept my mouth shut because I felt a little bad because everybody was getting these horrible messages and nobody was helping them. And here I have Ramona in my emails saying, how can I help you? Let me know how you're feeling and stay where you can if that's what works out. But it was only a matter of time, of course, until the first case hit Nairobi. And that was a girl who had been abroad in Italy, and she came home to her home country. And it, of course, came with her, as much of coronavirus traveled in that way. And a lot of this heartbreak and emotion, I think, just generally brought us back together. I would say that the closest we were the entire time was on the flight home. So finally, in the end, SFS had to shut it down totally because it was spreading and airlines were closing. But School for Field Studies actually bought us all a ticket to get home as a group. So each of us had at least 1 to 2 people sitting next to us on the flight. So we were able to spend our final hours together. But I would say Hollins really impressed me throughout this time. And I'm so grateful that we got to spend a majority of it still in Kenya.
Thank you, Cameron. And we remember that well. As I was working with the cabinet and others during this entire time, we were constantly navigating the CDC and the World Health Organization to see where, what were the rules, regulations, and the virus. So we were reaching out to all students. So Cameron got to finish all of her programs, save for a little bit of research, which she did with a faculty here when she returned. Does anyone have any questions for Cameron?
Ramona, I have a question for Cameron.
Sure.
Cameron, what was your research on? Like, what were you researching in Kenya, and like, what did you bring back to work on while you're here?
Thank you, Jasmine. That's actually a very complicated question. When we were in Kenya, we got to research various things that were supposed to be stepping stones to our final research project. So we got to do in the Amboseli a population count where we went out, and actually exactly where this picture was taken, and we legitimately counted every animal that we saw in our sector, and then we all got to the end and pulled it together. So that helps their version of like Parks and Recreation know how many animals are in this park. And then we would do general like habitat evaluations in the field. But we were supposed to do research at the end, a big capstone research, but we were sent home before we were able to do that. So Hollins University actually allowed me, instead of losing those 4 credits, they allowed me to do research with our own professors here on campus. And I did a bird song study in my own backyard.
That is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I just spoke with SFS the other day because I'm in constant contact with them about the progress of their programs. And they have research that goes back over 30 years that they accumulate and build on with students. So even though Cameron did not get to be there the whole time, whatever students do when they're there goes into the pool of research for SFS. It's really an amazing, amazing program. So
it goes not only into the pool for SFS, but actually we're working directly with the National Park Services of Kenya.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It's a global network. SFS is literally all over the world. So it goes not only for their own database, but databases around the world. So Really good stuff, really good stuff. So thank you so much, Cameron. So next, let's see. I am going to Julia Sullivan, who had the wonderful opportunity to be in Sevilla, Spain, that wonderful, beautiful Spanish city in Andalusia. And she was there right before things got crazy. And I think her story is a really good one. So Julia.
Hello, everyone. As Ramona said, I'm Julia. I am from Bel Air, Maryland. I am a English and Spanish double major, and this is my senior year. I studied with Spanish Studies Abroad in Seville, Spain, and it was for January 2020. This experience at first, before Corona was anything, before it existed in my mind, I was very nervous for. This was my first time leaving the country. It was my first time traveling alone, and it was my first time flying on a plane at an age where I could understand what was happening. So it was a lot of firsts for me. But as soon as I got into Spain and forced my way through understanding what travel was, what does that mean, how do I do that, I was completely relaxed and took everything as it came. As far as my classes, I did only stay for a month, but I think I learned so much more about not only just Spanish culture, because I think that was one of the main things I took away, but also my ability to communicate in Spanish skyrocketed. And I think that was mainly because one of our daily classes that we had, but more so my homestay. I stayed with a older couple, and being able to go home every day and see them, have them talk to me and comfort me and answer any questions I had and just welcome me into their family structure was like amazing for me, especially when it came to wanting to settle, wanting to have somewhere to return to every day after spending the whole day speaking Spanish, going all over the place. I also had the great opportunity to explore not only Seville, but other cities in Andalusia region as well, such as Cordoba and Granada. So being able to not only just see one city, but see more of Spain was something I did not expect that I was going to be able to do. When I told my mom that I left the city, she freaked out and she was like, "How dare you?" In my head, I was trying to imagine where you were at all times, and you did not allow me to do that. But as far as that goes, I was very proud of myself for pushing myself out of that comfort zone and seeing more than I would have if I just stayed in my comfort zone and just stayed in my room instead of going out and exploring more. As far as COVID, while I was in Spain, I only heard about COVID once, and it was when my sister sent me a text message, and she said something about a new virus is spreading. And this was very early on in January, and I just pushed it aside because she usually sends me like random stories like that where it sounds like it's just something that's going to pass or it's something expected. Was leaving Spain. I was in the airport. Nothing seemed suspicious. I finally made it onto the plane, flew to Madrid. Nothing suspicious. Staff in their normal outfits, etc. As soon as I got to Chicago and got off the plane, it was like walking into a completely different world. For one, every single person was wearing a mask. That was not something I was expecting to see at all, especially because COVID was not in my mind at all as something that was happening. So I immediately internally started to panic, thinking like, "Oh my God, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die? Like, what is happening where every staff member is wearing a mask?" And then it only got worse when I went to like go through customs again, because not only was everyone wearing a mask, but like they were like yelling about social distancing, and they were like big herds of people directing in every which direction. So I think it was just very disorienting to not have what I expected happen. And that was my whole trip. I was trying to stay in a mindset of flexibility. Everything before me, I don't know what's going to happen, and I have to accept that. But coming home and that experience in itself not being what I expected was very off-putting. And I don't think it was until like a few weeks after I had already returned home before like I was able to accept that this is nothing's really changed, but COVID is real. This is my life now, and I have to accept that. So I think it was just very interesting to come home expecting a welcoming feeling, and instead feeling like I came to a whole other place, a whole other realm. But that being said, I think it only made my experience in Spain seem so much better, which is kind of sad, but that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. It's like walking into the Twilight Zone, right? Any questions for Julia?
So why did you decide to go to Sevilla and not Madrid?
So this was a discussion I had with one of my Spanish advisors. Because of my level of Spanish that I had, she insisted that I go somewhere else, such as Seville, mainly because in Madrid, the language courses that they do have were on the lower end, as well as there's more people in Madrid who know English, and she wanted to make sure that I was being exposed to as much Spanish as possible, and that I wasn't just speaking in English the whole time, wasting that opportunity. And I was really grateful for that as well, in terms of the amount of like different cultural aspects I was able to explore specifically in Seville.
That's terrific. I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely, and that is so spot on. Many of our immersion programs, like French immersion, is in Tours. It's out of the Parisian capital. That's when you really get to learn a language. I know that from experience too. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Julia. We'll go on to our next. Tori Carter had the pleasure of being in Japan near Osaka. Such a beautiful, beautiful country, and this incredible picture of the cherry blossoms. Tori.
Hi, I'm Tori Carter. I am from South Boston, Virginia. I'm only 2 hours away from here. I'm a senior creative writing major. What else do I do? I'm a global ambassador. I'm a CA. I'm also the honor court chair. And I had the opportunity to go to Hidakata-shi, Japan, and study at Kansai Gaidai University there. So when I first got there, it wasn't roses. It wasn't like little pretty cherry blossoms. It was anxious. I had gone abroad before. I went with An and Udi to Jamaica in our sophomore year during spring break, but we were a team. It was all of us, all these different international students with different experiences, and we worked together as a team. The difference this time I wasn't 2 hours away from Virginia. I was 14 hours away, and I wasn't with the team. I was by myself. And so it was a lot of anxious video chats with my parents and my brother and my best friends back here. It was like phone calls with Danielle and Ramona, just trying to get used to like the culture shock, because I knew I would be surprised. I'm a first generation student, so no one before me in my family has done this, but it's the swiftness in which it hit me that really got me kind of knocked off course. That lasted for about 3 weeks, which seems like a long time, but like when you're in a brand new environment, it feels pretty quick. especially because you're taking in new information. After 2 weeks, classes started, and like the feeling started to go away, because now I was like, instead of being concerned about it not feeling like home, I was concerned about understanding my lessons. So I took sexuality and culture in Japan, medieval ancient Japanese history, intercultural communication in Japan, and Japanese too when I was abroad. I studied Japanese for 4 years, so I was confident enough to like speak in like rudimentary, actually like up to intermediate Japanese with different people and like my classmates. I initially was going to do a homestay, but then I decided when I got there that I prefer the dorm setting, because I was so used to being like at Hollins, where I'm close to everyone, and like I would go to my friend's dorm room and we'd work together, or we'd sit out on quad and do homework together. I kind of missed that, and so I moved into the dorms. It's also called a global village, like at there were so many different students in my unit. We had students from Finland, Spain, Germany, United States, and Turkey, as well as Saudi Arabia. And we had other students in our next door unit from Saipan, Philippines, Nepal, all these different countries all together living together. And so I really quickly got used to it. Like, it felt like Hollins. It felt like I wasn't just with students of like from America. I was with other students from other countries, and I felt like that was what similarities had with Hollins. Very soon I started taking day trips. I started hanging out with friends after dark, sometimes after class, if our classes like ran late, because I had a night class on the weekends, and we would go maybe grab a drink at the bar. It's very weird to say that some of my best friends are a bartender and an elementary school teacher. And it's an interesting kind of dynamic, because some of my classmates, I had assumed my classmates were going to be same age as me. I assumed that all of them go abroad during their junior year. That wasn't the case. Quite a few of them went abroad their sophomore year or their senior year. Quite a few of them were like older than me. So I initially thought all my friends were like 21 and under. I had friends that were 18 years old, so they couldn't drink. So when we go places, I had to be mindful of like, oh, you can't have alcohol, you're not of age. And I had friends that were 26 years old, so they've been drinking for a while. And then I had friends that were married, like had spouses back home. And that was a kind of a shock. I didn't realize that till halfway through. But I felt bad when I came home, because I felt like I got to live like a normal study abroad college life of like going to parties and taking day trips to different cultural places like shrines and museums, and took a trip to Tokyo for a weekend, went to a nightclub in Dotonbori, which is like one of the big like metropolitan city shopping nightlife spot in Osaka. I got to hang out with my friends, have sleepovers, have movie nights. It felt very normal. And then I turned 21. And I say it like that because literally we had kept up with the coronavirus epidemic pretty well. Me and my friends would literally wake up early in the morning, get ready for class, and then we'd meet downstairs in the lobby and we'd watch NHK, which is one of the biggest news stations in Japan. And like we'd watch it in Japanese, and then like our RA would translate some of the words we didn't understand. So we do that every day. So we kept up with coronavirus, and we're like, okay, safety measures, use safety measures all the time. And then it turned into a pandemic 2 weeks before my birthday. And then the day of my birth, like the night before my birthday, we went to the bar, we partied, had drinks. I was a little sloshed. And I wake up the next morning to an email saying, we're entirely online now. Students can return home. So before, like 2 weeks prior to that, it was, we're going online for a little bit, because coronavirus has reached Japan and we don't want to take the risk with students. And then it became everything is online. You can go home if you want to, or you can stay. And so I had to like make a hard decision then and there of like, do I stay? Do I go home? What are the odds that all the airports close and I'm stuck in Japan on a student visa and then I'm stopped being an international student? What's going to happen then? And there was obviously concern for everyone, not just American students, but for other students. Like other countries have different laws. Like in Japan, I could probably go to the embassy and get something renewed, or like talk to like Ramona and Danielle, and we could work something out, like work together as a team. But at larger schools, they didn't have that. At different countries, they didn't have that. There wasn't a guarantee that they were going to have aid in the event that they can't get out of Japan. So a lot of people ended up leaving. I was fortunate enough to stay till the beginning of May, and I got to still do other things. I still got to travel. I still got to go to different museums. It was limited capacity, but it still felt the same. The picture on my slide was from 3 weeks before I came back home, which was right after we had gone online and right after it had been declared a pandemic. And so I'm not saying that it was all roses, because sometimes I had nights where I was like, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if I don't make it home? And my quote really comes from the fact that all of us in my unit, as well as my floor, kind of came together and we're like, we're going to have a safety net for each other. So we had a plan. Some of us had a plan. We had money we had left over from our stipend. In the event that we need to suddenly leave, we would help each other figure out like the logistics. Like, how are you, if you don't have an international phone number, how are you going to call your airline to change your ticket? What do you have to do before you leave? Do you need someone to take you to town hall so you can cancel your citizenship? What can you do for each other right now? And I think that was like one of the best parts of my experience abroad. It wasn't just language learning. It wasn't just being in a new place. It was that we were a team of students. We all had no idea what we were doing, but we were doing it. We were working together. Ultimately, I decided to stay. I talked to my parents and they're like, look, if you feel safer there, which I honestly did, if you feel safer there, you stay. And we'll work out the edges and kinks. Because the difference between the way the United States and the way Japan reacted was Japan, we already wore masks all the time. I had a little scratch in my throat when I first got there, and I had to take a train to go get some supplies for my friend's birthday. And I wore a mask simply because I had a little itch in my throat. I didn't cough, I didn't sneeze. It was just, I felt like there was a possibility of getting sick.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like anything changed.
Right.
So
that's very true for Japan. They were one of the first countries to completely close down. And when we were doing all of the reconnaissance with all the students and countries, there were 4 students in Japan, and along with Tori, 3 others. All 3 of the other students decided to stay and thrived there. It was not easy, but Japan was one of the safest places for them to be for many of them. One of the students' home was in New Rochelle, New York, which was the hotspot of coronavirus at that time. So thank you so much, Tori. Any questions for Tori?
I don't have a question specifically, but I was actually also at Kansai Gaidai, but I'm embarrassed to tell you now how many years ago. And it was actually a different campus, so it's really interesting to hear your experience. I lived with a host family, so it was a bit different. And actually, one of my friends in Japan said the same thing when I asked how she was doing. That although she's in Tokyo, she said because it's a culture with masks already and not touching the way Americans touch, that it was certainly helping things there. So So yeah, but I'm also, it's really fascinating to hear about everyone's experiences being abroad in the midst of this.
Thank you so much. We have one more wonderful student, or any last questions for Tori before we move on to Udita? Thank you so much, Tori.
Hi everyone. It's really nice to see everyone. I really wish I could see everyone together, but then I have to scroll through the videos, but at least we're getting to do this. Like the whole screen says, my name is Udita, but some of my friends like to call me Udi. I'm a senior majoring in biology with a minor in math. I'm an international student from Nepal. And I've been here in the US for about 3 years, which is crazy. I'm getting old. So for my spring 2020, I went to the UK. So 2019 and 2020 was filled with just moving around a lot. As an international student, I'm already used to going back and forth a lot. But 2019 had Jamaica with Tori and Anne, and in December, I went to Texas for my internship, and from Texas, I went to New Jersey to meet a family, and from New Jersey to London. So it was just a lot of traveling in between a possible pandemic. But when I went to London, it was one of the most easiest flights because my flights normally take 14 hours to go, 14 plus 6 more hours. So it's like a total of 36 hours. But then when I went to London, it was just 7 hours. I was hoping for another flight, but I was just there. But once I went, I actually lived with the host family. And me and one of my friends from Hollins, so it's like Hollins abroad. So we had about 7, 8 other people who we were together with. And I lived in a place called Crouch End, which was the most amazing place ever. Like London that I saw in movies, that's what I saw. And that's where I was living. And I was living in the room with the attic with lights and everything that came in every morning. It was just a perfect London that I saw. And everything was going pretty smooth despite being an international student. Every trip is so different that you kind of do get a culture shock in a way. Like you're never accustomed to, even if you travel all around the world, you always know that every trip is different. And this trip was different in the sense that I was doing study abroad ×2. So it was abroad and abroad. So I was excited to learn more things. And because Nepal is influenced a lot by India, and India was highly influenced by London. So that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to see, like, okay, people talk that Nepal, some things in Nepal look like UK. And I wanted to see, okay, what exactly was it? And I went and I did see like how the stores were, how you could walk everywhere, how public buses ran. US was very different. So in weird ways, I felt UK to be much closer to home. Just because of the way everything was running. But yeah, we went to classes. We traveled a lot in the first few days. It was okay. I'd heard about pandemic, and in Texas, when I was in January, my host parents had said, okay, you're gonna wear a mask. And one of my research mates had given me like 7, 8 packs of masks in my bag to just be safe. It was a research institute, so they kind of had an idea about the virus and everything. And I was very aware of the virus being there, because this is a funny story, but when I studied microbiology in Hollins, I started understanding viruses and bacteria so like in a different level that it kind of, like I knew it was around me in a very biological way, which is very interesting. But we were traveling around, we were going to places, we were careful, we had like sanitizers and everything just to be safe, but life seemed very normal. We were traveling in public buses, public trains, we were going out to places. We went to Oxford, and thankfully we got a chance to go to Sweden also, and my friends in Italy were being sent back home, and we were traveling to Sweden in a week. So we were like, okay, is that going to happen? And as an international student, that was my only way to see Europe, and with all the visa stuff. So we did make it. We lived in a boat, which was the first time I went in a boat. Everything's so exciting. Outside my window, there's like an ocean. and we're traveling everywhere. We went to stores, just the very touristy stuff. And me and my friend would run around, get pictures everywhere, because with visas, I don't know when I'm coming back. And then once my friends were sent back home, that's when it hit me. It hit me that, okay, it's coming. It's something like this is going to happen to us. And within 2-3 weeks, we were sent an email saying, okay, you might have to return, but you have the option to stay because your homestays have been paid for and everything. If your homestay is okay for you to stay, you can, which my host parents were really nice to let me stay. But I had a limit to how long I could stay. I only had a 6-month visa. And my mind was like divided into 3 different continents. One was US, where I studied. One was in the UK, where I was living, and my parents back home in Nepal. So it was just, I was so divided. I wanted to go back home, but then I was scared about how if I go back home and things don't get, like the whole world shuts down intensely, and what if I cannot go back to the US, and what happens to my visa, what happens to my education, and all of that. It was just a lot of intense things. And then we got the news the next day saying, okay, US, as only citizens are allowed to come back, like return back to the US. And that's when my path became clear. Okay, I'm going home. I can stay with my family because after I graduate, I don't know when I'm going to come back. So I went back home overnight, booked my flights. I literally found it at 9 p.m., booked my flight at 11 p.m. Next day at 8 a.m., I left the house and I got into a flight. I came back. I went back home, and it was just, everything happened so fast. I quarantined sadly for almost 35 days. Because Nepal was in a confusing state where people were getting infected, but then they were showing symptoms very late and everything. And my dad, especially since he's diabetic, he was at risk person. So it was just, I was everywhere for that certain time. And when I was in quarantine, that's when I realized, okay, that's when everything processed. I went there, I went to places, and I'm glad I did that because I know it cut short. It wasn't the ideal situation, but then nothing in the world was being ideal. People were losing their families, losing their lives, and I didn't want to complain, saying, oh my God, I didn't get to stay in London, which I wish I had. But then it's that other side of me was like, okay, it's fine. You got to see things. You're with family. And I spent like 5 months with my family in Nepal, just my parents, which was amazing because it had been quite some time I hadn't been with them. But yeah, and now that I'm back in school and I'm seeing my friends all over again, I'm in a single and I'm like in the apartments, in the nice apartments, watching the sunset and everything felt like, okay, you had a moment and you got to see one of the places you've always wanted to, no matter how short it was. But yeah, going there, experiencing it, it just went by. I didn't get a time to process or think. I just had to make a decision every single day. And yeah, I think it taught me more than any other trips did, because every trip kind of teaches you something different. And in this, I learned that, okay, as an international student, I think I've got some, like so far, because I've traveled so much, I've like learned to be by myself and take decisions that will be good for me. But yeah, that was more or less how my London trip was.
Thank you so much, Udi. It was, yeah, London was a particular hard time. They went to Sweden for their spring break right before, and then closely watching the CDC, the state government went very quickly. Long nights on telephones, lots of students, but everyone was safe. Any questions for Udi? Did you tell people where that beautiful picture is with all the flowers?
That's actually in the Kew Gardens. They had an orchid festival and we went in the first few days there. Oh my God. Oh, that place, I remember that place even today, but amazing place to be in. But yeah, it was Kew Gardens.
Oh, great. Yes, we had another student who did her wonderful internship there in Kew Gardens. Thank you to an alumni, which was great. Any questions for Udi? No?
Udi, I have a question. where did you live at in London, and what was the like your most favorite thing that you did there? I studied there in 2018, so I'm like think through your Kew Garden picture right now.
I stayed in Crouch End, which is pretty in the center, I would say. It was about 10 minutes away from Finsbury Station, which is like very famous there. But it was pretty in the center of London. And my favorite place, there were a lot of bakeries nearby. I ate a lot. But I really, really, really loved their secondhand store where we would buy books. I bought a lot of books. And a lot of cuisines nearby. So a lot of Japanese food, a lot of Indian. So eating and reading, that's anywhere you can eat and read, that's me. I love that place.
That's fantastic. Does anyone have any questions for any of our students? Their experiences are also diverse, but they all share this common life-changing historical studying abroad during COVID time. Any other questions or thoughts?
Ramona, I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
So this was terrific. Thanks all of you. It sounds like they were just wonderful opportunities despite the pandemic. But so Ramona, are most of the abroad opportunities one person at a time as opposed to being several students, the old kind of London and Paris models?
You mean now or previously or?
Well, so now, so the ones we heard about
well,
are individuals.
Right. What we have our London program is Hollins Abroad London. So it's our classes being taught, and I think it was Tori. You mentioned you had gone to London first and then to Japan. It's where it's
Jamaica first.
Jamaica first. Thank you. But London is all of our students all taking the same classes together in the place we have there, FSU Center, is where we have our classrooms, etc. All the others are called affiliate programs, where students can go alone, or there may be, such as Japan, in spring 2020, there were 4 different students who chose to go to Japan all at the same time. And so they were together, but they were around students from all over the world, not just Japanese students or Holland students. So our program in London is Hollins Abroad London, where we only send our students. They all take classes together. They do extracurriculars together. Of course, they intermingle and do things with others. But all of the other programs, including Paris, which is now with IES, wonderful program, your French studies and your international studies and business program, are studying with students around the world. So we have one student who may want to go to Cambodia, one student who may want to go to Kenya. There may be a group of students, such as in Germany with Anne, there was another student, there were 2. So London is the only program where it's a group purposefully going together. All the others are students choosing the programs.
Great, thank you. Yes, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm. And that may be a perfect segue. On my clock, it shows 6:29, and I'm aware of everyone's time. I thought I'd share a little bit about, what does this look like in a COVID world? Because of course, all of us have been pivoting. And one of the things that I did previously in institutions before I came to Hollins was work with faculty and institutions around the world to do collaborative online international learning projects and virtual exchange. And so that's what we have brought, to Hollins. One of the things we're doing is looking at, even though we've canceled our programs, we're still working with our students for 2021 and beyond, but I'm also working with many of our study abroad partners on virtual possibilities. And one of the things that almost to a T, every single partner of ours have done is start having international internships virtually. And they have said these are here to stay. So we have students who can internship with organizations around the world, but they're virtual. And that's one of the things that I think will be a permanent, on the permanent landscape of study abroad and global engagement, is that possibility of virtual internships. Many of our partners have also turned to virtual study abroad components as well. The other thing is I'm working with a core of a small group of faculty here at Hollins. As I mentioned, I did collaborative online international learning projects previously, and I have a core faculty cohort that we got together in the summer. I did some workshops. I've partnered them with partners I've had previously, but also currently. And literally as we speak, I'm enjoying this wonderful webinar, but on this computer over here, I have a COIL screen with 2 faculty from Hollins working with one of our new partners that I brought on board, Freedom Institute in New Zealand, doing a class together. So we're really looking at how can we do virtual exchange and keep that engagement with global classrooms, global faculty, and global areas. And again, we're also looking at ways we can engage students and faculty through research, through virtual opportunities. And our newsletter that I put out every month, hopefully you've seen it, it's on my.hollins. We have a variety of things. We've been having Travel Tuesdays. We've got a lot of global events and virtual events that are happening, both our global ambassadors, but also looking at how you can get engaged in other ways through not only traveling to a place, but learning about a place. So I wanted to share that with you all as well. And I'll leave it at that. Lauren, any questions? Any questions for anyone? Thoughts?
Hi, Ramona. What did you say was if we wanted to look at the travel, what's the email address? My.Hollins, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. And yeah, do you have, I don't know if alumni have access to the internal My.Hollins. Maybe Lauren could answer that.
They do, but I am going to send a follow-up to everyone on this list with the recipes, and I could include this with that.
That would be perfect. Yes, we have a monthly newsletter that we put out, and what we do, we literally put a call out to the entire community, faculty, staff, students, you know, what's going on, but also I'll add in some things that I know that are going on around the world, around the area. And the newsletter is one way where we can have all that information. So thank you, Lauren. I'll provide that to Lauren and she'll get that to you.
And Holly has just chimed in, Ramona, if there's anything that those living abroad can do to help with the, with the learning opportunities. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. But
yes, Holly, I met you in London. She told me about the hot toddy, as she reminded me. Alumni are so important. As I mentioned, we did have a student that Udi was studying abroad with that did her internship at Kew Gardens with one of our alumni that was there. So being a touchstone for our students who are there where you are, or offering international internships virtually, or internships virtually anywhere, that is always something that we're looking for. And any kind of ideas, just shoot them our way. This is a time of brainstorming, as you know, flexibility, brainstorming, new paradigms, we're open.
Fabulous. Well, I want to just also say a special thank you to our students for sharing your experiences. You all just did a really great job being flexible, and it was just neat to hear everything that you experienced. And thank you. And thank you to our alumni for joining us. We will have one more program in November. We're buttoning up, so watch your email. But again, thanks for being with us tonight, and enjoy your evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.